there's a gap. Of recent, I've been hearing apostles speak to that gap.
Oh, right.
At Koinonia, some of your teachings
Absolutely.
have addressed. There was one that went viral that was saying that creating job, for instance. You remember that one?
Absolutely.
I wanted to speak to the apostle was saying that if I call people out now to pray for them to receive job, everybody wants to get a job. But who will create the job?
That you want to get?
Yes.
Pastors are praying for people every week to get jobs. Question, where are the jobs? And where will they come from? You see how we make a fool of ourselves? The last time I prayed for people for jobs, there were people enough to be a congregation who came out. Now all those guys believe that the anointing that came from me is powerful enough to give them jobs. The only thing is that where are the jobs? Because the person whose mandate and orientation is to build the business that makes that prophecy come to pass, his vision has been killed by the mentality of his pastor. Did you hear what I said? That CEO's vision was killed the moment he joined a church. The moment he joined Koinonia, a poisonous engineering came from a well-intentioned preacher that destroyed his appetite for growth and called it
Yes.
I think I'm tempted. I don't want to yield to the temptation of going into this because it's a passion in my heart.
Yeah.
I summarize it as being apostolic in our approach to Christianity. And so being apostolic meaning that it's important for us to really understand what was in the mind of God when he built the church. He said, I will build my church. And so we need to go back to the mind of the builder to understand what did he intend to build. I think people are shaped by the convictions that drive them. And the convictions come from the leaders who train them. So that gap is still traceable to the pulpit. And as men of God, corporately speaking, we have to take responsibility for not being thorough and broad in preparing the people. So that king-priest dimension, we've done well with the priesthood, but that king dimension, we have not done a thorough job.
Managing resources,
Exactly.
providing.
So the average believer not only does not know these things, he's been trained to not take it as being a serious Christian. Once you begin to teach the king dimension of living, most people, especially people who are given, with all due respect, into consecration, prayer, fasting, they've trained themselves in a way and manner that once you start being apostolic in your approach, systems, structures, spheres of influence, relationships, resource management, leadership, they shut down and just feel this is not for me. And it's a poor orientation. So the challenge, in my opinion, and I believe this, and I've advocated this for a long time, is that we need to go back as men of God and sit on the drawing board and examine the content of our sermons. Because the people are loyal. They are loyal to anything we teach them. And every assembly, with all due respect, reflects the limitations of their shepherd or the thoroughness of the shepherd. So if you have widespread influence and with it you produce an ill-prepared people, it's still easier to correct them it's easier for the man of God to break his pride and then fix it. It's fixable. And we can come up with systems to remedy that aberrated understanding. So if I spend time, just like Pastor Godman said, in his presence, getting wisdom, getting power, getting glory, I realize that if I isolate myself from the world or hope that things happen, I'll give you an instance. Ask the average believer, does God prosper? They will say yes. And you ask them, how do you think God is going to prosper you? Usually they'll say somebody is going to stand up somewhere. God will seize his peace because I am an anointed person and God will not leave me begging. Now you see, it's a very narrow-minded thinking, because now that person is not a creator, it's parasitic thinking. You see, there's a difference between favor and being parasitic. So the person wants to use spirituality to excuse the responsibility of learning the principles that make for wealth creation, and he just believes someone will pay the price and God will give him the burden of enriching you indefinitely. You see, so that kind of poisonous orientation. Now imagine if you're a pastor who has that orientation. That's how you plan to run your church, run your membership. You will produce all kinds of disaster. You see, so the call is for people to be wholesome, especially for women of God. And I think being wholesome means that we must have the self-security to listen to one another and get the dimensions that may be foreign to our spiritual experience but needed in our lives. The refusal to respect the unique distribution of God's grace across one another and listening for where I can learn from you that may not be captured in my experience. You see, so the imbalances come sometimes because of pride. It's not because the knowledge is not available. We feel that if I have to bend over to listen to you, it's downplaying on the kind of power and the grace I carry. So I'd rather my congregation suffer indefinitely, feeding my pride or ego, than for me to be able to augment my limitation in one moment and for the sake of God's people help them. So if you understand my perspective. So it boils down to the humility to realize that no matter how effective you are only a member of the body. So the ability to be unashamed to draw perspectives and reality, it will remedy, where I'm not able to see. Pastor Godman will see, Pastor Bolaji will see, Pastor Yemi Devi will see. So combining that revelation gives me a clearer picture of the army God is building, the church is building. I can translate that updated perspective and it will speak in the lives of my people. You see that? And it does not distort their loyalty towards me. In fact, they become grateful for being secured enough to reach out to other investments within the body.